G'day, my name's Chris Muir, I'm an ADF Product Manager, and welcome to this next episode of the ADF Architecture TV channel. Now today we're still talking about the pre-planning phase of ADF applications. So while the ADF Architecture TV channel is responsible for talking and discussing with you design and architecture and development type phases of your ADF projects, we also want to address common questions that happen in the pre-planning phase. And we've got a common question for you today. Now the question comes from the perspective of a project manager or a team leader. Now they have a number of developers who they know they need to train up in ADF, but they also know that ADF is a Java framework. So while it'd be great to have all of the programmers to be Java experts as such, in general, across the development team, what is the base or the absolute minimum Java skills that we need to give each team member? So in answering this question, you don't need to just go to Oracle staff. There are some excellent consultants out in the real world who are working on ADF projects who have already answered this question. One particular consultant, Sten Vesterli, who is an Oracle ACE director. The Oracle ACE directors are the kind of like VIP or celebrated presenters and evangelists of, in our case, ADF technology. Sten Vesterli recently wrote a book, and it really gives the best quote, I think, in summarizing what the base skills, what the base Java skills an ADF programmer needs. So in Sten's Oracle's ADF Enterprise Application Development Made Simple book from Packet Publishing, he has this wonderful quote about how competent in Java do I need to be an ADF programmer. I'll just read that quote out to you because I think it really answers the question quite well. Not everybody who writes needs the skills of Shakespeare, but everybody who writes needs to follow rules of spelling and grammar in order to make themselves understood. Every ADF programmer on the ADF project needs to know Java as a programming language and be able to write syntactically correct Java code. But not everyone who writes Java code needs to be a virtuoso with full command of inheritance, interfaces, and inner classes. So this is a nice little quote from Sten because it articulates that yes, you need to understand the syntax and all the basic parts of the Java language, but you're not going to have people who understand absolutely every part of the language. All your programmers don't need to be experts in all the ins and outs of Java, and in fact in many ways ADF will remove the need for the majority of your programmers to be Java experts. However, you will still need to have one or two Java experts around because they will be able to make use of and manipulate the ADF framework in particularly special ways that Java can provide. Given that answer, I think we now understand that we're not going to have to send all our ADF programmers off on very detailed Java courses. Okay, so maybe some basic Java skills, but we're not going to have to train them up on all the ins and outs of the Java language. But what I haven't done here, again, is articulated specifically what topics within the Java realm that an average ADF programmer would need to know. Now, if you've ever bought a Java book, you'll know they're typically about this thick, and they certainly have a lot of topics that can be covered. So can we give you any guidelines on specifically what skills or Java skills are in and what Java skills are kind of, well, it would be nice to have, and what Java skills you won't need in order to write an ADF application? So in order to give us a list of topics in order to answer this question of what specific parts of Java do your standard ADF programmers need to know, I had a hunt around and I found that currently Oracle University, when this episode was recorded, has 2 Java courses. Now, they are for Java 7, Standard Edition 7, 11GR1, 11G2, JDeveloper and ADF work with Java Standard Edition 6, but it really doesn't make any difference for what we're doing here. So these 2 Java Standard Edition 7 courses, 1 and 2, had a nice list of topics that we could look at. Now in context of the 1 course, or the Java Standard Edition 1 course, your programmers should know all those topics. In context of the Java Standard Edition 2 course, well, here is the list of topics, and these are the topics that they should know, okay? And they're pretty much still basic Java concepts. In terms of the topics that they don't need to know, there is assertions, threading, and concurrency. Why don't they need to know about those? Well, assertions is a best programming practice for Java Standard Edition where you put programmatic assertions in your code to check that certain conditions are true when you say call a function, that maybe the parameters are supplied, or that a certain logic should be true at any point in your application for it to have got to that point. And if it doesn't meet that expression or doesn't meet that condition, it will just throw a little error such that programmers can look at it and go, oh, well, I assume that was what was meant to be true here, but it hasn't occurred. Now, in reality, while assertions work in Java Standard Edition, they do not work in Java Enterprise Edition, and that's what ADF runs on top of. So assertions are kind of useless to teach our programmers here. In addition, threading and concurrency, while it is good to have at least one expert in your programming team who understands those concepts, from the context of an ADF programmer, they're never creating new threads and they're never really working with the concept of concurrency. It's pretty rare. So you might need to occasionally have somebody who needs to write a piece of code in that space, and you can give that to your Java expert. Generally speaking, you don't need to have your whole team trained up in programming with threading and concurrency. So that little point there gives you an idea of sort of starting where the limits of your Java skills come in. Because if you go and read any standard books on Java Standard Edition, or you do any course like this Java Standard Edition 7.2 course here, you'll see that they believe threading and concurrency is an important point to cover. But from an ADF programmer's perspective, it's not really needed. So you can see in the Programming 2 course, we have a few topics left over, and there's a bit of conjecture over these topics, whether your Java, or I should say your ADF programmers need to know these particular topics in Java or not. Having conducted or taught this particular slide in some internal Oracle training courses, there's certainly been some interesting debates about whether all Java programmers need these or not. So there's a bit of a grey line going on here. Let's talk to each one. String processing. Now, it used to be when programming in Java, when concatenating strings, programmers had to be pretty clear about concatenating strings in loops, that it had a performance impact. And arguably still, Java programmers should have a good idea of what can go wrong in terms of concatenating lots of strings together. It really can slow your application down, maybe. Now, why do I say maybe? Because it's known in the latest Java compilers that a preprocessor comes along and can actually convert your code into string buffer concatenations instead, and you'll get the benefits of that without having to actually write string concatenations using the string buffer class. So it's probably good that your programmers at least have a general understanding of this, but I'm not sure anymore do they need to be taught this in detail. Another area really depends on what sort of application that you're working on, and that is the Java I/O fundamentals and the Java file I/O fundamentals as such. Maybe your ADF application will work with uploading and downloading files from the application server. Maybe it won't. So whether you need these skills in your ADF team is really dependent on what you're actually building. Maybe a recommendation we can give you here is at least have one team member who has knowledge in this area. And again, this is probably going to be your Java expert as such. The next point, JDBC, or the Java Database Connectivity APIs, is one that we have debated internally quite a lot. If you're building a vanilla ADF application which uses the standard ADF faces, ADF binding, and ADF business components layer, generally speaking, you will be talking to an Oracle database, and generally speaking, at some point, you will want to make calls to PL SQL routines in the Oracle database. In order to do that, you will need raw JDBC programming skills. Now, I've been at sites where they said, well, no, programmers shouldn't be writing JDBC anymore because they're not using ADF with a database. They're connecting to a SOA engine or something similar. So again, this is one of those areas where not sure if you need everybody to have skills. It really depends on what you're building, but at least have somebody in your organization, again, a Java expert or one team lead, who knows how to write JDBC code. Finally, the last item here, localization. Well, from a subjective point of view, here I'm located down in Perth, Australia, and the predominant language we speak down here is English. Now, in all the times and all the systems I've written around Australia, and I've been involved in over 40 different applications in my 10-year career in the IT industry, I've only ever written one system that required localization. So from my perspective, localization as a skill doesn't make a lot of sense. However, of course, Oracle customers are located all around the world, many in Europe where they're multilingual, many Asian countries, in many countries where they've got customers overseas. And in this case, it makes a lot of sense to have localization skills. And in that case, I nearly say all your team members need to have skills in localization from the Java perspective. Again, it depends on what your project needs, and that determines what Java skills you should give your base ADF programmers. There is an obvious question from this point though. Let's not consider Java anymore. What Java Enterprise Edition skills do our team members need? Do we have an idea of maybe we should actually have some Java EE experts or basic Java EE skills within our broad ADF team? Well, again, the answer is, generally speaking, we don't need to have all our ADF team members ultra skilled in Java Enterprise Edition or Java EE. What we do need though is to have at least one Java EE expert on the team, somebody who understands the concepts like servlets, the HTTP filters and listeners, and also has a beyond the basics understanding of Java Server Faces. Now, JSF or Java Server Faces is the basic technology or standard or specification that ADF Faces Rich Client is written on, and by inference your ADF programmers will have skills in JSF when they learn ADF Faces Rich Client. But generally speaking, a Java Enterprise Edition expert should have a broader understanding of the JSF spec and things like, as example, the Java Server Faces lifecycle, which can end or introduce some tricky little problems sometimes into the applications that you're writing. So again, you probably need a Java EE expert, just like you need a Java expert. And I wouldn't be too surprised that that's one and the same. In fact, on the teams that I've worked with previously, that person, the Java EE expert, the Java expert, and the ADF expert is typically the team leader. And as the person that's holding the whole ADF team together, has all these extra skills and is able to advise the junior programmers on how to deal with little nuances of Java, Java EE, ADF, and so on. We now have an answer to the original question then. Do we need all Java experts or Java EE experts on a team? No, we don't. But your basic ADF programmer is going to need some Java skills, and the more they have, the better it will be for your ADF project. You will need to supplement your team skills with at least a Java expert, a Java EE expert, and an ADF expert, because you can't basically have everyone having, well, just average skills. You're always going to need somebody who has more in-depth knowledge of how to use these technologies. But generally speaking, don't go and send all your programmers off onto very long and extensive and expensive, I should say, Java training courses. You can get through with getting them into the basics, maybe going to get them to write a few small Java programs and ADF programs to make sure that they actually had the basic skills that we've talked about today, and that should give you an idea, do you need to spend that very expensive training budget for your upcoming ADF projects. Thanks for joining us on the ADF Architecture TV channel today. Please take the opportunity to follow the link that's currently on the screen and to subscribe to our channel for our upcoming episodes, where we're not just going to be talking about the getting started phase of ADF project, we're also going to talk about design, architecture, development, testing, deployment, and all those sort of issues, those high level issues that are very important for the success of, well, not just ADF projects, but all software projects out there.